2 years I've worked this problem, we have identified camps, detention areas throughout Southeast Asia. Now there are many fewer Americans alive in Cambodia because of the bloodbath that was experienced there than there are in Laos and Vietnam. But there are camps in both countries right now.
The only thing that can be done, if they should bring to have peace of mind, bring my son back alive to me. And if not, I gotta know if he's dead.
Across the land, tomorrow is the day we traditionally celebrate Memorial Day, paying homage to those men and women who gave their lives for their country in all wars. On Channel 17 Reports this week, we remember our dead, our living veterans, and those servicemen who never came home, the unaccounted POWs and MIAs. For those veterans of Vietnam, their battle continues in such encounters as proper recognition for their deeds and an honorable solution to the post-war silent killer called Agent Orange. Still another postscript to the Vietnam War is the accounting of some 2,500 servicemen classified as missing in action in Southeast Asia. Such an accounting was made by a former commander of the U.S. Army Special Services in Vietnam following secret forays into both South and North Vietnam. Lieutenant Colonel James Bo Gritz, one of our country's most decorated Green Berets with 60 citations, spent 2 years in planning and training in several secret locations in Florida with his specially trained unit. Its mission, code-named Velvet Hammer, find our missing men and bring them home.
Information that I've been able to develop over the last 2 years tells me there are 3 kinds of Americans now in Southeast Asia. One is the American who might be likened to a Garwood. For whatever voluntary reasons, he went AWOL, he deserted. He's there by his own free will. There are a sprinkling of these kinds of American servicemen there. Also combined with these are people, missionaries, journalists, other would-be do-gooders who may have just gotten caught up in the communist takeover and for whatever reason was not able to get out. Now, that's one kind. The second kind, and I talked to a person who was very high in the Saigon government and now occupies a lower position, but still in a position to know within Ho Chi Minh City. And he told me that there is a colony of Americans who, again, for whatever reason, has decided that life there is better, maybe, than no life at all. And for whatever reasons, may have adopted Vietnamese families but are living as a colony. He also told me that this colony was being moved from the north when the Chinese punished Vietnam, moved from the north down to the south for better security. The third American that I spoke of is the one that I'm interested in personally. This is the American serviceman who is being held against his will, a captive. He's the American serviceman who has kept faith in God, this country, and I hope the Special Forces. He's the man who has, for whatever reason, stuck by the code of conduct, and he is a captive and a POW. And he is alive in Southeast Asia today, and we know that he's alive first, and secondly, we know where he's alive. And thirdly, it's up to us, I believe, to go and to bring him home. A conservative estimate is 100. And my own estimations, knowing that there are more than 6 locations throughout Southeast Asia that contain American POWs, numbering from 46 all the way down to 7, would be somewhere in between 100 and 200.
Why would the communists still hold prisoners of war after all these years?
A good question. And when I was first put onto this mission, that's the very same question I asked myself. I said to myself, the United States in 1973 received its POWs back from the Vietnamese. And what in the world would be the motive to hold prisoners now? It didn't take me long in investigating in Southeast Asia to find out these reasons. First of all, the communist is by nature not going to give up something for nothing. We've seen this in dealing with communism since World War II. Any time that they may come up trump card, why give them up? As an example, the communists just released, the Vietnamese released July, it'll be 2 years this July, just released a Frenchman held over from the 1954 Indonesian War. That's a part of congressional record. General Tai testified to that 2 years ago, July. So why hold on to the Americans? Well, they may turn up trump card. Now, trump card to what may be the follow-on question. Well, it's fairly well known now that our former president, Richard Nixon, did send a secret letter talking about reparations and payments to the Vietnamese for whatever cooperation they might give us in return of our POW/MIAs and other things. These reparations total some, and I've seen a document from the State Department that lists the types of things that we are willing to give them, and it goes from ox carts all the way to locomotives, and it totals about $5 billion. Well, right now the Vietnamese are doing pretty well under the Russians, but what happens in the world situation is always changing. If the Russians begin to put the screws down, which they are on the Vietnamese now, the Russian economy is beginning to suffer a little bit, so they naturally turn the tap off to some of their satellite countries. And all of a sudden, Vietnam may need more assistance they're not getting from Russia. Or what happens if China decides they're going to get involved again and punish Vietnam? It may become very advantageous, and they're holding these because they are trump cards. They're holding that American so they can offer him up at the right time and say, for whatever purpose, be it foreign military assistance, be it political chessmanship, whatever.
Has our government been truthful to the American people concerning the POWs and the MIAs?
Hard question, but good one. The simple fact is, and let me preface my answer with this, the government has to deal very, very carefully because it is dealing in an international political arena. The communists have said, we have no POWs. Now, if we were to do something as blatant as to go there and forcefully, by military force, extract POWs that we know are there, and we were to fail and self-immolate or shoot ourselves down, as in the case of Iran, then we got egg all over our face. The Russians can look at us and say, what are you trying to do, President Reagan? Are you trying to start World War III? You're telling us to stay out of Iran and out of Afghanistan, but yet you openly go into Southeast Asia and blow yourself up. Now, if we're successful, what's the problem there? If we go in militarily and pull out forcefully some POWs, it may very well slam the door on any further negotiation, because the communist has to save face, the Oriental communist. That's more important to him than life itself. So any plan that we have must be geared toward a rescue to open the door, because negotiation hasn't done that yet.
On the local home front, there are many anxious relatives who have spent up to 15 agonizing years wondering whether their loved ones were alive or dead. Because of the nature of the Vietnam War, many of the missing were airmen, shot down over the jungles. Mrs. Susan Chakowski is the sister of Colonel Robert Diskowski, who has been missing since April 1966.
What was the last official word you received from the government about your brother?
When they declared him dead.
And this was when?
Last year. I don't know the date because
They
I
waited 14
disregarded
years?
it.
They waited 14 years?
Yes. That's one of the reasons the families have class action suit against the government for declaring status changes without any new evidence. If they wanted to declare my brother dead, they should have done it a year and a day after he went down because of what they call passage of time.
No evidence?
There is
Dog
absolutely
tags,
no
remains? No, nothing.
There's absolutely no new evidence.
What makes you feel that your brother Bobby is still alive and in captivity in Southeastern Asia?
Well, I don't feel that he's still alive. I feel that I have to fight in case he is, because whenever I slack off, whenever I slow down, there's a quarter of an inch of hope left in there, and you say, what if he does come home and he looks me in the eyes and says, and you quit on me, I didn't quit on you. So that's why we keep fighting.
Mrs. Mafalda DiTommaso is the mother of Lieutenant Colonel Robert DiTommaso, an intelligence officer missing since July 1966. Through the Freedom of Information Act, Mrs. DiTommaso acquired an official document that indicated an attempted cover-up of her son's disappearance in Southeast Asia.
Two transmissions were received from the aircraft. One transmission, we are under attack by MiG fighters. The second transmission, we are being forced down by fighters. This incident was processed in the same manner as all other aircraft losses. The base responsible for submitting the initial casualty message was contacted to ensure that they had been notified of the loss by their base operations section, and all information was available to them. All information concerning aircraft losses received from 7 Air Force command posts was kept in a memo book classified secret. On the next visit to the command post the following day, the duty officer asked for the paper containing the information concerning the C-47, and I gave him the page containing this information, and he destroyed it. He said, "Forget the information on this piece of paper," as if it never happened.
Now who was the author of this paper?
Well, has been no name on this official document. This here was just an official document that was given to me by the Defense Intelligence Agency.
Was your son ever seen as a prisoner by any sources?
No, he has never been seen, but a defector from North Vietnam gave information about the C-47 that was downed on July 29th, and according to the way the analysis made by our intelligence, it said that 2 men were captured, and the way the personnel were lined on that plane, they figured that it was my son and another intelligence officer by the name of Vincent Chiarello that were captured.
Now, our government didn't want us to know that we were operating over Laos, did they?
I guess not, because otherwise they would have released that message that they were forced down by MiGs. At that time, we didn't know that we were fighting in Laos, and according information that I got, I think they were also being the pilots of the pilots of the planes were Soviet pilots.
Did you get any encouragement from the Laotian government when you were over there?
No, I can't say I got any encouragement at all. But when we were out there, we were briefed by a Laotian general, Sat Petrasi, and he told us that there were a lot of caves in Laos. So I figure that they are really keeping men in caves in Laos.
Did you relay this information to American authorities?
Well, I'm sure the American authorities know all that. They got all that information.
Mrs. Eva Rozo, the mother of Staff Sergeant James Rozo, was notified that her son was taken a prisoner of war when he was caught in a ground ambush in June 1970. But his name never appeared on the official POW lists.
Jimmy was in communication. They went on a mission for supplies. There was Jimmy and Philip Roberts from Robert Phillips from Ohio, and Patterson from Washington. They went for supplies, and their Jeep was found with the motor running, bullets in the tires, the windshield, the roof. There was no blood in or around the vehicle, but no men around. They just disappeared.
Last seen walking in the jungle toward Cambodia.
Right.
Now, has the government given you any encouragement at all over these years?
None at all. None at all. We've been going to Washington 2-3 times a year and come home with nothing. There was 2 morticians and 1 embalmer that read our records, and they decided that my son was presumptuous finding of death, which we do not agree and will not accept their decision.
No dag tags, no remains,
No
just
remains,
paperwork.
just paperwork, just paperwork.
Have you had any kind of a report from any boat people that got out of Vietnam as to what could be happening over there?
Well, the boat people claim that there are Americans alive in small camps and small groups. They're working in the rice paddies as slaves and on the road gang.
How about bodies?
The only information we got that there was 400 bodies in the warehouse.
American servicemen.
American servicemen. And that was brought to us by a Vietnamese mortician that claimed that he boxed and numbered the bodies.
Now, how do we get our government to take action?
Well, I think the public's going to have to get after our congressmen, our senators, write to the president and try to get a task force over there to investigate these rumors.
What can you tell me about your planned operation to rescue our servicemen in Southeast Asia?
Well, as soon as I got over to Southeast Asia, I discovered that, in fact, there were Americans being held captive. Now, the first step is to determine that. Are they there or aren't they? That was done rather quickly through polygraph of agents. And now there have been more than 400 first-hand reports that have been confirmed. The second step was finding out where they are and getting confirmation of it. Because you really, I don't have a suicide tendency. I'm not going to take myself or my troops and go there not knowing that my quarry is there and possibly walk right into the lion's den. The confirmation had to involve first-hand reports that an American could verify, either photographically or through actual eyeball contact with the POWs. Last year, I went to Southeast Asia and lit 2 fuses, one in the south and one in the north. There were 2 known camp locations, but again, we needed positive confirmation. And at this time, we're working with a very small group, myself, an interpreter, an agent handler, a few people that are involved. It was not until we had that confirmation where there was no doubt that Americans were being held at a specific location that we pulled together Operation Velvet Hammer down in Florida. That operation was scheduled to launch so that we would take advantage of the good weather just preceding the monsoon. The monsoon began the 1st of May. And had we launched, would have been back by the middle of May. We'd have already been back last week, either with one of 2 things, with prisoners in hand or with American verification that they weren't there any longer.
How long did you train in Florida? How many men did you have?
Because our target is still viable, I would rather not disclose that kind of tactical information. Simple to say that the support force, the tactical force, and the technicians were the very best to be found anywhere.
You actually had a location where you believed the POWs were?
We had a location where we were willing to risk our lives. It was not just my information. This is also information that is shared within the intelligence community. In the 2 years I've worked this problem, we have identified camps, detention areas, throughout Southeast Asia. Now, there are many fewer Americans alive in Cambodia because of the bloodbath that was experienced there than there are in Laos and Vietnam. But there are camps in both countries right now.
Was a League of Families of MIAs involved in any way in financing this mission?
Glad you asked that question. There's been some recent media indicating that we, quote, spent the rescue money of the League of Families in this mission. The fact is, we have not used 1 cent of any rescue money of the League of Families.
There have been many reports of hundreds of Americans being held in Laotian caves, reports of Vietnamese refugees citing Americans in groups of just 1, 2, or 3, or 6, or 10, anywhere from 1 to 100. They've seen Americans, and they know they're Americans because they have beards and they're tall.
Has the government admitted this to you? That there are Americans over
They
there?
just recently changed their official word. They're so guarded. They would say, their official statement before was, we feel that there is no evidence that there are any Americans alive in Southeast Asia being held against their will. Now their statement is, we believe there may be evidence to suggest that there may be Americans being held against their will in Southeast Asia.
You've been having petitions signed in the various malls throughout western New York. What has been the reaction of the people? Are they apathetic or are they encouraging? I imagine you get mixed bag, huh?
I do get a very mixed bag. Now, I've been told by a lot of people, all these years and they haven't done anything. I don't think they're going to do anything about it now. Well, and I do the best I can and tell them, well, I said, if the American people are not behind us, us for what we're doing, I don't see why they're going to do anything. And in fact, after this mission, this rescue mission, one of the men told me he wouldn't sign. Not only him, a few of them wouldn't sign. He said, well, they went over, there are no men over there. But then I wanted to explain to him that there are caves in Laos, and there's not only this one POW camp, there's so many in North Vietnam, but he just waved his hand and walked away like he didn't want to hear anything else.
Did you ask him what he would do if it was his son?
Well, I try to be very nice and not bring that up.
Are you critical of the government's 2 forays into Laos with mercenaries rather than Americans?
Oh, I'm very critical, and I'm surprised. The government has people within it right now with the same capabilities we have in Velvet Hammer. Good soldiers, good people, people who have handled agents who know this kind of business. I learned very quickly in Vietnam, doing intelligence type work, that you cannot depend upon an indigenous source, especially if you pay him. If you appeal to his political, his religious, his social beliefs, you can get him to go a lot further than you can if you lay a lot of money on him, because all of a sudden he wants to live to spend that money. And in very, very similar cases where we have paid mercenaries to do things for us, they have gone out in the field, they have found themselves a nice shade tree, they have set up camp, they've had dinner on the ground and all day sing, they have come back with wondrous tales to tell. But who knows? The simple fact is that to send mercenaries to do something so important as determine whether or not American POWs are alive at a specific location and being held by the communists is beyond belief. An American should have been there so an American could have seen. And the technology they used, there's no way that they could have had anything definitive.
But the government was aware of your operation. Why wouldn't they consult you and have you go in?
Well, the government wanted, I think in this case, to be the cavalry. The government has the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Joint Chiefs represent all 4 services, a huge bureaucracy. The Joint Chiefs have played a major role in the last 3 rescue attempts. Son Tay. They knew there weren't any American prisoners at Son Tay 6 months before they sent a raid force in there, but they sent it anyway. Mayaguez, the people went into the wrong island. And before that, 18 American air policemen died in Thailand when their helicopters crashed. They were the original rescue force. Henry Kissinger controlled that rescue force from the White House. In Iran, again, a dust storm basically is the excuse for our debacle there. But JCS was the one pulling the levers. So JCS has a lot of responsibility for this. They feel they have the computers, the analysts, the capabilities to pull all the things together and control it. But you see, that's the problem. That's the elephant again. That's why private sector was a very simple, very direct, no control type of plan that left the government a complete, we didn't do it in the event of the worst, or we did do it in the event we brought back our POWs.
I understand the first government mission into Laos was fired upon. Does it make sense to have a second mission shortly after that? Wouldn't the Laotians move the prisoners?
Yeah, good conclusion on your part, and normally I would say the answer to that would be yes. But let me explain something to you about the area they went into. You hear the commercials all the time. The colonel's face is all over the place, referring to Kentucky Fried Chicken. In Laos, everybody's got a resistance force. They're all over the place. If you were to take your resistance force and try to go to a target, you might encounter 2 or 3 other resistance forces. My recommendation when I returned and wrote it the 26th of May in 1979 stated that what we should do is begin working with the Lao resistance in recovering MIAs. These are remains, because we know where there are about 50 crash sites that we could bring back those remains. In working with the Lao resistance, we would be able to evaluate them, we would be able to organize them, equip them, train them, so that when we did go for the target, they would be a unified body. Now, there is an informal communications net amongst the Lao resistance. My unit, for example, knew all about the 2 forays that the CIA element made, because they all talked to each other, and they knew what happened. And they reported to us long before you ever saw the report about them being fired on and failing to do the target, that they had gone there, that they had been fired on, they had gone there, they had not been able to make contact, and that basically their mission was a failure, because they're the same people that the agency's been using time and time again in that area, and there are no Americans with them.
How do you reach the American people to remind them never to forget? What is your organization doing to keep names like Bobby's and others alive?
We have a petition campaign going on right now, and we go to the malls, and several of the chain supermarkets have let us set up tables for people to sign the petition. It's really amazing, the people's reaction.
What kind of reaction are you getting?
You get anything from, boy, you guys are really tough. You can really take it, and those guys are going to get home, to, oh, brother, are you still on that? What do you want them back for anyway? They're all a bunch of dope heads anyway. It's amazing what the young people think. They think that everybody who went to Vietnam came back a hophead, you know, and they don't admire these men that fought gallantly and were tried much more severely than any soldiers were in Korea or World War II or World War I. They were told not to win, and that's a hard fight to advance 60 feet and see your friends killed, and then retreat and take the same 60 feet tomorrow and see your friends killed. It's infuriating, and it's wrong, and it's inhumane.
Can you tell me about your upcoming trip to Washington? What's going to be done to bring this to the attention of the President?
Well, we are going there with a lot of petitions that we have gathered at these malls, and which are being gathered throughout the whole country, which we want 2.5 million petitions. Maybe it might shake the government. The petitions then are going to all be turned over to our executive director, and they are going to be to present it to President Reagan or an aide, whichever, to ask him to take the necessary steps to account for these men that are unaccounted for in Vietnam.
There are future missions in your plans?
Oh, let me say this, that once you put this rucksack on your back, you see, and let me interject this. Several people have told me, Bo, we want you to go to Southeast Asia, use your contacts throughout that area to get a skin feeling. And even one person, a key person, even told me, come back and tell us there aren't any American POWs. And when I went there, that was my feeling too. I'm going to go there, I'm going to find out there aren't any. When I came back, my report simply headed, I'm sorry, I can't tell you there are no POWs, because there are. Once as a soldier, you have put on the rucksack. You know that your comrades are there, still keeping the faith. It's something you can never set down.
Let's say you conducted your mission and won or two of your men were hit, what would happen to those men?
We've always had to deal with this in special operations, even during the war, and we dealt with that question in our preparation for Velvet Hammer. An interesting aspect we used. I said we had an advantage of technology, we have an advantage of expertise, we have an advantage in surprise, or we did have that advantage. Now we have a less of advantage. The bottom line to your question, but I want to answer it more fully, is that in the event that we had a rescue mission underway and one of our people was hit, we would have left that person cached. We would have left him hidden until we could return for him, having marked his location on the ground. Something that we anticipated, however, because of experience in the Vietnam War, was how to deal with fatigue, gunshot wound, pain, shock, many of the things that you encounter in combat that you don't seem to have any human control over. And the answer to that, very ironically, was through hypnosis. The astronauts, and I hope I'm not saying anything that NASA wouldn't want me to say, but the astronauts are conditioned so that they urinate, eat, wake up, do certain tasks, all hypnotically by signal. A radio signal comes across and they're awake. A radio signal comes across and they eat. And so I began to think to myself, well, if they can be hypnotically conditioned to respond like this, why couldn't we use it to enhance our sensory perception so that we can see more clearly and hear better? So that when we do sleep at night, if we only have 15 minutes, it can be as if we've slept all night. So if we have pain of shock, for example, if you're wounded, so that you don't have to, you can continue to move, you don't have to stop because of the pain. Maybe you can overcome the shock. And we honestly perform some remarkable things.
Some veterans organizations observed Memorial Day last Monday, and it was obvious that sentiment was strong for an accounting of our missing in action.
We stand here today, our heads bowed in prayer. This is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of unity and strength in God and country. The graves of young Americans who answered the call to service, which surrounds the world, will give testimony to the fact that America is not weak, but a glowing, blazing fire of liberty and freedom, which we will stand ready to preserve around this world. Thank you.
How about our missing in action? What is the VFW's position on the MIAs?
We have circulated petitions through the various county councils, districts, asking that the government do something about getting our MIAs and our POWs back. Now, there are several bills coming up before the state convention where we will put more petitions into the hands of the veterans, getting the signatures and presenting them to the different legislators, senators, congressmen. We demand that these people be brought back in one form or another.
Any thoughts on a recent revelation about a mission to try to free up some of our MIAs?
Well, there again, the mission was going to be commanded by Bo Gritz. Unfortunately, the media got a hold of the training plans and they had to abort this mission, which to be successful had to be done in secrecy.
Why wait? All of a sudden, 1981, we find out that there is hope that there are some of our MIA still alive. Was it a cover-up?
I don't know if it was a cover-up or just the fact that these politicians just didn't give a damn, if you'll pardon my language. These people in the Vietnam War were victims of an unpopular war. They were there, and I firmly believe that as long as our country sent them there, we should back them to the hilt.
What are your thoughts on the MIAs in lieu of all of the recent publicity that a rescue mission was attempted?
I think it's an indication that someone's been hiding the facts. If they sent a rescue mission into Lois to try to find some missing veterans, I think there are some. And I think it's an indication that our government has not been leveling with the people, and that there maybe are servicemen that are missing in action in both Vietnam, North Vietnam, South Vietnam, Cambodia, and in Laos.
You feel it was a little bit of a cover-up, or do you feel that the press may have forced their hand in revealing this?
Well, actually, I think there was something that the press got hold of prematurely, but they have a right to release it as well as any other organization. I think they'd probably been remiss if they hadn't, but the critical problem is that they did it. The critical problem and the critical thing is the fact that our government recognized the fact that there possibly could be missing servicemen in that particular area of the world, and they sent a mission in to find out. Unfortunately, it was canceled the first time. The second time, they really didn't come up with any concrete results. But if that be the case, it shows that the Reagan administration is at least going to try to find out whether we do have some servicemen there. I think it's a healthy thing.
Is the American Legion in any way involved in helping to bring out the MIA issue?
Well, we keep after our legislators to do more about this. We lobby in Washington, we lobby in Albany, we lobby for more concrete information. We'd like to know if they're dead, or if they're not, and why, if they're alive, can't we get them back?
How many years has it been now that you've been keeping up a vigil for your son?
What, it'll be 15 years, July 29th. Exactly 15 years that he has been reported missing.
What keeps driving you?
Well, the only thing that keeps driving me is that I gotta know where my son is at. I just cannot live like this.
We've been used since my brother went down, and the families who have men who went down before that and didn't come back or were accounted for, they've been used. So I'm very skeptical.
How have you been used?
Well, whenever there has to be a resurgence of patriotism in the country, somehow we always hit the front page. And then when things are going along pretty smoothly and the people have faith and the polls show that they have faith in Carter or Ford or whoever it was, nobody hears about the POWs and MIAs. And there's nothing in the news except on the obituary page. Even if it's something about life, spotting life, it's on the death notice page, which infuriates us. And the government has not been truthful with the families. And so even if they're truthful now, we already have our guard up. And I really feel bad about that, because we should trust the men who are trying to save our men. But we can't. We've been duped. We were told, my brother, when the POWs were coming home, they said, don't talk too much about it. Keep a low profile. Don't rock the boat. Same thing we were told when my brother was taken, because they might not return all the men. They might not give us the information. Well, anyway, it says right in the agreement that they're going to give us an accounting of POWs and MIAs right along with the return of the POWs. So when the first batch of POWs came back, we should have had an accounting, a sheet that said so-and-so, so-and-so's plane is in such and such an area, here is the aerial photo, and so on, so that our government could coordinate it with the information they had about this individual. None of that information was forthcoming from Vietnam, and for some reason, the American government kept trusting them and telling us to shut up. So we shut up like fools. We were fools, because if we would have screamed bloody murder then, I think we would have most of the men accounted for at least, and a lot more returned.
I feel the government has shot itself in the foot with its recent disclosures. I think, without being too paranoid, I think one reason the government might have leaked the information to George Wilson of the Washington Post about its operation is because they saw themselves getting into a box. The weather's bad. Timing is bad. Maybe JCS isn't able to get all the data it needs to feed into its computers to give them a green light go. They know that I know as much about the operation as they do, because our intelligence sources have paralleled theirs. I talked to some key individuals not long ago, and these key individuals assured me that the operation was on. It was a go. That was firm. I was even invited back into uniform to participate. All of a sudden, it's all off. Now, this tells me something. One is, who calls it off? The operations people call it off, not the intelligence people. The intelligence people are convinced that the Americans are there. It's the operations people that for some reason or other say it's off. I told one of these individuals in the Pentagon not long ago that I intended when I came to Buffalo to release enough information that basically the government would have to go forward. And I think that individual, being a good staff officer, probably went to his boss and said, hey, Grates knows as much about this as we do. If he's going to start releasing information, it could be kind of embarrassing. I think at that point, and again, I don't know, but I just think at that point that that might have been the last straw. They said, hey, listen, this thing is very iffy as it is. It's very risky. And what we better do is just make it look like we did everything we could. There aren't any Americans there. Maybe it'll go away and we try again next year.
What must be done to finally give you peace of mind?
I would like more proof, either the dog tags or my son's body returned. Dead or alive, I want him home.
The only thing that can be done, if they should bring have peace of mind, bring my son back alive to me. And if not, I gotta know if he's dead. Because when I did go to a status review hearing in San Antonio, Texas, they wanted me to prove that my son was dead, was alive. And in the meantime, they never proved he was dead. So there must be something.
Well, either Bobby, alive and able to be helped, Bobby's body so we can bury him, or some proof that is satisfactory to us, like someone who can identify Bob's plane, or his dog tags, or somebody who is well-versed in the Vietnamese situation to tell us that these bones are Bobby, or some technical proof. I can't tell you what it would be that would satisfy us outside of Bobby himself coming back.
Now, you had a couple of key officials in your corner. Are they still around?
Oh, boy. You know all the questions. This is a very key thing. As I mentioned, 2 years ago, if it would have not been for real human beings, not bureaucrats, willing to come forward and put their neck on the line, we would have never gotten as far as we have. There are some very, very high officials that are occupying current positions that have helped me with this project, actively helped me. Another reason that I'm telling you, the things I'm telling you now, is because I'm convinced these people won't be there very long. The bureaucracy knows who the people are who also have a great deal of information. The bureaucracy has a way of swallowing these people. And I just have a feeling, and that's one thing I'm afraid of, is that I know now where the POWs are. We could have gone and brought them home. We didn't, in deference to a government option. I'm afraid that the good people may be replaced by other good staff officers, but people who maybe don't have the same devotion, the same experience level. They weren't real fighter pilots, for example. They weren't real combatants. Maybe they'll be the new guys in those jobs, and they will, because they are new guys, be much more vulnerable to political pressure. Hey, let's put our attention on the Middle East. Let's stay off of this Southeast Asia thing for a while. And if you're new in the job, why not? You know, you don't want to make your boss mad. And I have a great fear. You see what I don't want to do? I have one of two options. One is I can just do nothing. And then later on I can come up and say before you or any other media, you see, I told you so. Damn it, way back there in 1981, I told you Americans were there and you wouldn't listen and do anything. Or the other option is I can do everything I can to keep this issue alive until, by God, something does break. And something will break. It broke in the Nixon affair. And my conscience just tells me that as long as I stick to things that are true in reality, that time will test it. And that's why I can't set this issue down. And that's why I'm telling you the things I'm telling you now.
For some veterans, the past extracts a daily price, and each Memorial Day brings a flood of memories.
Your war was supposed to be the war to end all wars, wasn't it?
Well, you know, I had confidence that that's one thing that I was anxious to get in this. There would be no wars for my children to fight in. What a letdown I've had since in the last 50 years. It's just the opposite of what we planned for back in 1918. And the people here have been wonderful to me. They made it as home-like as any such setup could be possible. I have no reason to regret coming here. I'm proud of it. And when I see Vets Hospital up there, I really get a thrill.
You're in good hands.
I really get a thrill. Yeah. The boys, they're taking care of their boys.
Well, Memorial Day makes me feel back to those who wasn't as lucky as I were, who did not come back home. We heard our pensions was going to get cut, our Social Security was going to be cut. It made us feel bad. Look, what did we go and fight for? What's all these things we've done? They forgot about, we done those things. They're forgetting them. So I appreciate it if Mr. Wiggins, our president, would kindly look back at the veterans, see what the veterans have done. Don't forget about them. A lot of guys come here scared to take operations. I tell them, trust in him. Trust in God. God is the man to trust in. Man is not the trustable, but God is.
Well, you take a look at this country, compare this country to other countries, you see the freedom we have here and the freedom in other countries. So I think even though we had wars, nobody likes them. But we do have a country that's free. My birthday's on June 14, which is Flag Day. And I see these flags flying, you know, and that sort of makes me feel pretty good. You know, not that they're honoring me, but just to see that the flags are coming out. That's the way it should be on Memorial Day. People should get their flags out and say, hey, this is for our people that served our country. That's what we're free, and that's what I like to see.
This Memorial Day, I would say it's been very honorable for the Vietnam veterans. It didn't used to be. It used to be the fact that people didn't consider us veterans. I guess the Vietnam veterans, the only soldier that really come back and we didn't win. We actually lost over a political reason. I think the Vietnam veterans been treated very badly in the past. We are just now beginning to be recognized as veterans of foreign wars.
If you have any message for the people out there watching this Memorial Day, how would you advise them to not forget what all of you people have gone through in our various wars?
Well, I would ask them to remember all of us that's had to go to combat, either in World War I, II, or the Vietnam War, Korean War. I would ask them to think of us a lot and remember that we've been through a lot, something that's going to be with us the rest of our lives, psychologically and physically also.
There's one more story to be told, a story of a young Buffalo soldier that took 36 years to reach a proper conclusion. It was 1945 when William Grabiez was killed in the retaking of Manila in the Philippines. In 1948, the Common Council passed a resolution to name a suitable memorial for the Medal of Honor winner. It took 33 more years to get it done. Ron Arnold narrates.
He rests here now at St. Stanislaus Cemetery in Cheektowaga, a simple military marker on the grave of a Medal of Honor winner from Black Rock. The medal goes to the bravest of the brave for acts of courage usually performed while saving someone else's life. February 23, 1945, the Philippines. PFC William Grabiez was an already decorated 19-year-old scout with the 1st Division's 5th Cavalry Regiment. Lieutenant John Gregory, who had joined the outfit that day, was shot down. Grabiez tried to drag the wounded officer to cover, but he was hit in the shoulder and disabled. Unable to move the officer, Grabiez covered his commander with his own body, a human shield. Grabiez died, huddled over a wounded comrade, saving a man he had known for only a few hours. The medal was presented to his father, Casimir, in December of 1945. But the years passed, the sacrifice slipping away in the void of time, preempted by the daily press of the business of running a city. No street, no school, no park named for the hero. The resolution passed in 1948 surfaced again in 1960. The council planning to fulfill the earlier promise by asking the state to rename the Skajakwata Expressway after the Medal of Honor winner, but even that memorial was denied him. The state decided to retain Skajakwata, some officials feeling that Grabiez would be too hard to pronounce, even for those who had mastered Skajakwata. Another 18 years passed, but everyone had not forgotten. Veterans groups kept up the pressure to dedicate an appropriate memorial to William Grabiez. In the spring of 1978, it finally happened. The council passed a new resolution which Mayor Griffin signed, naming the museum at Buffalo's new Naval Park in memory of William Grabiez. Just 3 weeks ago, the dedication ceremonies were held. 3 of the hero's sisters were among those attending an event they had awaited for almost 4 decades. A 4th sister of Grabiez died just a week before the dedication.
He must have mixed emotions, both pride and sadness today. Quite an honor.
Oh, so much. So very much. It brings 36 years back, just like 3 weeks ago. Just very proud. Wishing Dad was here. He's up there watching and saying, I'm proud of all of you down here.
What kind of a boy was Bill as a teenager?
What kind of a boy? Happy-go-lucky. Never good boy, nothing too big for him. Nothing, everything was very dear and important to him. He just, if he could help someone, he would be the first one to.
Also at the dedication, the wife and son of the officer, William Grabiez, sacrificed his own life to save.
When did your husband pass away?
He died in January of 1964, so just about 19 years after Billy so heroically saved his life.
Did he ever talk about it, your husband, or did he sort of put it in the back of his mind?
Very little in the beginning, but gradually, bit by bit, it came out. And especially at the time the bodies were returned in 1948 and the articles were in the paper, then he talked a little bit more about it. But he was reluctant to say too much.
You wouldn't even be here, would you?
No, I know. That's exactly why I came, because if it weren't for Billy, I wouldn't be standing here today. And so I'm very honored and thankful that he was so heroic at the time.
He was a student at Riverside High School, and he left school to join the Army. He was a boy who came from a very loving home, and he was a boy who was a good boy. Everything that we have been able to find out about him shows that over and over again. Today we're going to create a little time capsule. We're going to take you back to those years, 1943, 1945, and see if we can put them in perspective just for a little while, so you can understand what kind of a boy Billy Graviatz was. And the best way we can do that this morning is to read some of the correspondence that the family got, letters that were sent to William, letter that William sent home. In creating this, I hope that you can better understand why we feel so good about him and about the thing that he did. Now, Miss Gutierrez is going to read a letter from a sister. If you were a boy from Buffalo, what would you think would be in that letter? I was so surprised when I read through them that it was so typical. Probably every boy, and probably every boy who was Polish, got a letter something like this.
Dearest brother, today is Friday, and gosh, it keeps me stepping but good. Gosh, you boys sure are doing some fighting over there. I sure hope this thing will be over soon, and once and for all. Tell me, Bill, what will you do the minute you hit the good old USA, and especially Buffalo? Several days ago, we had another snowstorm. Honestly, Bill, we never had a winter like we are having this year. This year, Easter falls on April 1st, quite early this year. At present, there are news flashing on the radio. Gosh, we sure gave a beating to Tokyo. They deserve every bit of it. Well, Stinky, write if you can, and you know I will too. Be a good soldier. God will take care of you and protect you always. Remember your dearest mother in your prayers, for I know she is helping you always. Lots of love and prayers, your loving sister, Louise.
And then there was the young soldier's last letter home.
Dear Mom and Dad, well, now that I'm in a rest camp for a short period of time, I will do my best to write every day to everyone. For the first 2 days that we have been in this camp, we already had 4 cans of beer and turkey. And believe me, it tasted something delicious after being in a jungle or sitting on a mountain for 60-odd days. They tell us our division has beat all the other divisions in fighting the longest without a rest period. You can imagine how we all felt. Remember the boys on Bataan and Corregidor? They fought 67 days, and we have them beat. Before I come home, I believe I have 1 more campaign to go through. So that will make 3 campaigns for me. Then I can call myself a fighting soldier. Say, how did you all spend your holidays? Hope you all had a wonderful time. Well, folks, dinner is about to be served, so I'll close with love and kisses, your son, Bill. Postscript. Thought you would like to know if I go to church. The answer is yes. It seems I go more than ever before.
The last letter. A legacy, perhaps, to veterans with memories of sacrifice they cannot forget. And for those who may find sacrifice difficult to remember.